We're here to talk about the non-financial aspects of retirement and how important those are. And actually, they are just as important, if not more so, especially with the year we have been through now. So, with that, I'm going to start with a little exercise. Humor me if you will. I want you all just to close your eyes for about 20 seconds and visualize your retirement. Maybe you are approaching retirement, so visualize, what you think it will be, or maybe you are in retirement. That's okay. This is for you too. What do you see in retirement? Maybe it changes a little bit going forward. So I'll give you 20 seconds. And I'm going to take a stab that maybe a couple of you now have that visual in your mind. Maybe some of you thought about your account balance, how much you should have in retirement. Maybe you thought about how much you're saving in each paycheck and is it enough for retirement? Maybe you're thinking about the tax consequences of transferring assets to a non-spousal beneficiary and what that means for you. I really hope you thought none of those things. I hope you thought about your friends, your family, who you would like to spend time with. Maybe you thought about playing more golf. Maybe you thought about where you would travel to, especially after all of this is over, which we hope is at the latter part of this year. Maybe you thought about, just taking up hiking or some new hobby. That's what this presentation is about. It may seem kind of soft and unnecessary, and you really need to focus on the numbers, but trust me, it's just as important, if not more so, because like Scott said, you just don't flip a switch one day and stop working and everything is great. All aspects need to be planned for. So T. Rowe Price is one of the largest 401k managers globally. So we do a lot of research from the ground up with retirees, pre-retirees and retirees, and really on their investor behavior. And in some of the studies we've done with pre-retirees, we found that there is a big gap in those who focus on the financial aspects and the non-financial aspects of retirement. We found that 74% of pre-retirees have made a serious effort to plan for financial aspects of retirement. So that's a good number there, 75% very much taking it seriously, but only 35% actually thought about the emotional aspects of retirement. I think we all think, it'll be the happiest days of our lives. We'll stop working. We can turn off the alarm clock, go golfing, do whatever we want. But it's not as easy when it comes to planning emotionally for this time. Many people think, oh, I'm going to take up golf or tennis or whatever it is. And they do, and they don't like it. So now what do they do? So that's what we're trying to do here is kind of open your mind to that. What are the non-financial aspects that are most important to me in retirement? So what does having a retirement vision mean? When we talked to pre-retirees, we found that they use certain terms. 50% of the pre-retirees we talked to mentioned working with their spouse or their partner to define what their retirement would look like. 46% talked about creating this picture, actually visualizing it, what retirement and what their lifestyle would look like in retirement. This may be a simple example, but I played a lot of sports growing up. My big sport was basketball, and I would get really nervous before games and anxious. But my coaches always told me, visualize the game ahead of time. And every time I did that, the game was easier. I played better. So if you can take it from that approach, just picturing it, have a clear picture, that starts the process. Also, on the right here, we saw that 32% talked about defining their purpose, figuring out what their purpose means in retirement. That's probably the most important thing, but not enough people even know what that is heading into retirement. And then here, second to right, 42% talked about defining how they would like to receive required health care. Healthcare was said a lot, and that's totally understandable. It's a big concern, it's a big stressor for a lot of people heading into retirement, but we're going to talk about it in a positive light. There's usually a negative connotation with healthcare. We want to look at it positively today and also envision that. So, how can creating a vision help you? First of all, it alleviates a lot of anxiety around retirement. Whenever there is a problem, whenever I have a problem, if I plan ahead of time, I usually alleviate, or it usually alleviates a lot of stress for me. I'm not as worried about it. If I start thinking about it ahead of time and putting a plan in place, when I procrastinate, things don't typically work out well for me. So, what creating a vision can do, number one, is create that clarity. Maybe if you were foggy at the beginning of this presentation and closing your eyes for 20 seconds and you couldn't really think of anything or what your retirement would look like, doing this can help create some clarity. It can also help you establish a framework. I think when you envision retirement, often people tend to want to think 20 to 25 years into retirement. What will your life look like? But that's not necessarily what you need to do early on. Maybe think ahead 5 to 10 years. Start where you are today and then work your way up 5 to 10 years. It's less overwhelming. And then work with others towards your goal. Once you have created clarity, you have a framework of maybe 5 to 10 years in the future. Now it's time to verbalize it. Share it with your family, your spouse, your partner, your children, your friends. They want to help you get there and they can't read your mind. And ultimately, the most important person, I guess, in terms of this conversation, too, the other people you want to share it to or with, is the team here on the line: Scott, Spencer, Alex, and Tiffany. I like to call financial advisors financial therapists. I know people laugh at that, but money is all about behavior and emotion. And retirement has a lot of emotions attached to it. So if you can share with your advisors your vision, the non-financial vision that you have, they can help you get there. The more people that know, the better. So for all of you former English majors out there, or journalism majors, or anyone who wrote a paper in college, this may look familiar to you. The 5 W's: the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. And how I want you to think of visualizing retirement or starting this project is, imagine writing a book about your retirement, or an article if you were a journalism major, or if you're into movies, a screenplay, or whatever it is that can help you structure your story. We're going to talk about the 5 W's: the who do you want to spend time with? The what activities do you want to do in retirement? The where do you want to live? When is the timetable? Do you want to transition slowly into retirement? Do you have a certain age? And then ultimately the why. The why is the biggie, and it's not why do you want to retire? It's much bigger. It's what is your purpose in retirement? So we'll start here with the first W, the who. Who are the people you are going to spend time with in retirement? And why is this important? Why is it important to think about it now? First and foremost, social interaction helps your health, both mentally and physically. People who are socially engaged have a lower risk of cognitive decline and dementia. Also, studies show a strong correlation between social interaction and health, and suggest that social isolation may have significant adverse effects to older adults. Now, I hope you don't get annoyed with this, but I'm going to use my parents as an example of this idea of visualizing retirement. And in full disclosure, I am actually at their house right now in South Carolina. Don't hate me. I know you have a snowstorm coming in Washington. That's where I live full time, but I've been here for a couple of months due to COVID. I was able to stay here for a little while. But I think they encapsulate this idea of visualizing and the emotional side of retiring and doing it right in a way, if I can say that. And a big part of it is how social they are. And, they were always social people when they were working full time, but they didn't have enough time to get together with friends and other family. But now they do. And pre COVID, they had dinner parties all the time, barbecues in their neighborhood. My aunt and uncle and their family lived down here, so they would see them all the time. And now, actually, in COVID, me kind of but living vicariously through them or seeing this, they're still quite social. And it's all because of this medium we have right here, Zoom. They have 2 to 3 Zooms scheduled a week. And in fact, I heard my dad say to my mom the other day, I overheard him saying, "Do you want to schedule any more Zooms this week?" And, they love it and it keeps them busy. They have their wine and snacks on the Zoom with their friends. But I'm so happy in this time when we're all isolated socially in a way, they've been able to find a way to connect and overcome this barrier we have right now. So as we go through this, when we talk about the 5 Ws, we're going to have some exercises here. And we have a worksheet that I will have, if you would like, the team can email you after we go through this evening, or they can mail you a hard copy, and you can actually work off of the worksheet. But tonight, I thought it was best to just kind of listen along and start the thinking process for each W. So we'll start with who. And I mentioned earlier, when creating clarity, you want to start by thinking of where you are today. So who do you spend the most time with today? And rank them. So do you spend the most time maybe virtually with coworkers today? I know, again, we're in this weird world that we only spend time with a very small group of people, but think today and then think pre-COVID. Who did you spend the most time with? Coworkers, your spouse, children, tennis partner, personal trainer, your friends at church, whomever it is. Order that today. And then look down the road, if you can see into retirement, and even if you are in retirement, who do you think you will spend the most time with in retirement? And reorder that list. Are you going to spend, I would presume, less time with your coworkers? Maybe you would like to see just as much of them. Maybe you'll spend more time with your children, with your grandchildren. Maybe you'll join a book club and whatever kind of social club. Also, it's important to think about the relationships that maybe it's time to move on from in retirement. I've seen my parents do that. So it's important to think of both sides. Who do you want to spend time with? And maybe, as I said, who do you not want to spend as much time with in retirement? And I brought up healthcare earlier and the negative connotations around healthcare, the worry of our declining health, the cost of healthcare, who's going to take care of us. It's very stressful to think about. But I want to replace the term healthcare with wellness or care, self-care, whatever you want it to be. And when it comes to who you want to spend time with in retirement, will those same people be on your wellness support team? Who are the people that you will need to or want to rely on if your health declines or something changes? Obviously it could be a spouse, a partner, a child, a sibling. Maybe it's a workout buddy that will be on your team to keep you motivated, a golfing buddy, tennis buddy, your yoga teacher, someone who can stimulate you mentally, a book club, but a wellness support team who can help you live a vibrant life. And then the other stressful thing that a lot of pre-retirees and even retirees think about is whose wellness support team do I need to be on, or who do I anticipate, or what team do I anticipate being on? Who am I going to have to take care of when their health declines? And that can be very stressful for a lot of people to even think about it. But when you start thinking about it now, you can prepare and you can have conversations with these people. You know, one of the things I forgot to mention is, you know, who from a medical standpoint is going to be on your wellness team? What doctors do you trust that will, you know, be straight with you, that have good bedside manner, all of the important things to you. When it comes to your wellness support team, who's going to be on your team and who do you anticipate helping? And so this kind of helps us to not think about healthcare in a negative way. So at the end of each exercise here, I just want to encourage you to take some or have some action items in place. One or two things, nothing more, because trying to figure this out all this evening is too difficult. It's overwhelming. So maybe start by making a list of those people, 3 people that you would like to spend more time with in retirement. Maybe take that list and consider whose team you will be on, whose wellness support team you may have to be on. But just, you know, a couple people just to get the process going. You know, don't make this overwhelming for yourself. This, you know, can be an enjoyable process too. Maybe you start researching different social clubs that you want to join, a book club, whatever it is, volunteering, but just 1 or 2 steps that you can take today. So we're going to move on to the second W, the what. What activities are you going to engage in during retirement? So when we interviewed pre-retirees, we found that the activities they envisioned were number one, travel. 70% wanted to travel. Most of us can't do that right now. 57% wanted to spend more time with friends and family. Very hard for us to do right now. Want to pursue hobbies. Maybe we can pursue some different ones in the virtual world we live in. And actually, 30% said they wanted to continue working, but maybe it was something different, something they were more passionate about, or maybe they wanted to even start their own business. So take these ideas, because these are a lot of these things we really couldn't do over the last year, but most likely will as we head into the latter part of this year into 2022, and start thinking about the activities that you want to do and making lists of those, and recognizing that even though you want to travel and you have ideas of hobbies, there is still going to be a lot of time in the day that you have to fill. You could have all the money in the world and be able to travel all over the world, regardless of the expense, but it's very hard to do that 24/7. So, you know, what are the mundane things that you need to start thinking about from a day-to-day standpoint that will keep you busy and fulfilled? So when we talk to those who are 65 to 64 or 74, retirees age 65 to 74, we found that the activities they spent each day on average were 4 hours of watching TV, probably more so now. Obvious reasons, there's a lot going on in the news and there's not much else to do. 1.5 hours a day were spent working, 2.5 hours a day on home improvements, and 1 hour a day shopping. And there were quite a few hours, I guess, apparently in the research in there spent on drinking and eating, which we have a lot more time to do these days. But this just highlights that when you flip that switch and you stop working, you know, it's not just all going to magically fall into place. You know, that fulfillment in retirement. We need to plan for it. We need to fill the time in some way, shape, or form with things that, you know, will please us and be enjoyable and are fulfilling to us. So this is the exercise for what. You want to start with now, where you are today. How do you spend your time now? And rank that. Maybe you work most hours in the day, and that's where, you know, most of your time is spent. Perhaps you spend time in leisure activities. I use golf a lot. I'm not creative enough to think of anything else, but golf, you know, seems to be a big activity in retirement. You go to church, maybe, whatever it is, rank that from how you spend your time today in order. And then how do you plan to spend your time in retirement? Is it going to change? Do you want to continue working maybe? So that stays the same, but in something different. Maybe you want to travel more. Maybe you want to take up, I don't know, volunteering, whatever it is, re-rank that and start thinking, how will things change going forward over the next 5 to 10 years? And this goes back to that healthcare question, the wellness question, I should say. Who's on your wellness support team? Well, what activities will you pursue in order to have a vibrant retirement? So, one of the great things that I've seen with my parents in being here is that they've gotten a lot healthier in retirement. They worked full time and, didn't have time to cook back when they were working full time, which was a while ago now, maybe almost 10 years ago. And, they got takeout, they ate what was easy and fast. But ever since retirement, they have really focused on their diet and they can spend more time cooking and preparing meals, and it's very enjoyable to them. They've lost weight and they are healthier than ever. And they really are actually more active than ever. They're constantly moving, even though we can't really go anywhere. They're up and down, working in the yard, and staying vibrant is very important to them. So, having the people who can keep you active plays into how you will stay active and vibrant in retirement. So, what are some action steps that you can take today? Identify where you spend the most time or what activities you spend the most time doing today. And do you want to change that going forward? And if there's something you're really interested in, maybe it is travel, going to Europe when you finally feel safe enough to do so, or going to Australia, researching a trip, looking at volunteering, whatever it is, just start that process little by little today. Now, the who and the what often identify the where in retirement. Where will you live and visit in retirement? And using my parents again as an example, we are actually from the Detroit area originally, but they moved down to South Carolina about 7 years ago when I moved out to Seattle. So they made the big move at, I think it was 67 years old, and moved down here. And it's a big thing to do at that age, and it was really stressful, but they've never looked back. And this is why really thinking about where you want to live in retirement is so important, because they really didn't consider it until I left Michigan. So with that, when we talked to pre-retirees, they gave us three top criteria for deciding where to live in retirement. 71% said they looked at the cost of living. Affordable cost of living is really big. 49% said climate was very important, and 54% wanted to be nearby family and friends. So my parents actually checked off each of those boxes. Detroit, you may not think it's expensive. It actually is. It's quite expensive versus living down in South Carolina. So they checked that box. Good weather. I shouldn't even need to explain that, especially right now. And then they're close to family. As I mentioned, my dad's side of the family has been down here for more than 30 years. So they've really hit all these boxes, and it was probably the best thing they could have done for themselves. But it's not for everyone. In fact, there's something called the senior migration rate. And in that study, they found that only 6% of those 55 to 59 actually move from their current residence, and only 4% of those 65 to 69 actually move out of their current residence. So my parents were part of the 4%. So when you think about the where, which of the following factors are most important to you in deciding where to live in retirement? And again, rank that from most important to least important. Is it cost of living? Is it weather? Is it being near family? Maybe it's being in an urban area. Maybe it's in a low crime area. Maybe you want to be close to top access or have access to top healthcare, low taxes, whatever it is. Start in your mind, and you can write these down too as we go. I forgot to mention that, but just ranking from most important to least important as far as factors in terms of deciding where to live. And then take that and think about your primary home in retirement. What characteristics are most important to you? Do you want to downsize? A lot of retirees have a desire to downsize. They don't need the big home anymore. Or maybe you want to upsize. Maybe you want to live in a planned community, have low maintenance, be near a college town, which seems interesting, but actually, a lot of retirees desire to live in college towns because of the cultural amenities. You have concerts, recitals, speaking engagements, sporting events that are much cheaper than professional sporting events. So those are little things that you may not be thinking about today, but can add up over time in retirement and make that period of time that much better and more fulfilling. And what's interesting too, I mentioned upsizing, is my parents actually upsized. They were able to do that going from Michigan to South Carolina, and they did so because they knew they would have a lot of visitors. Obviously I come to visit quite often, but a lot of their friends from Michigan drive down to Florida and they stop over and stay with them. In fact, pre-COVID, they had visitors all the time. So it made sense for them to upsize. And they also, one of the things they wanted was the master bedroom on the first floor. That was important to them too. So little things, again, that can matter. So action items. Ask yourself, what are the biggest factors for me in terms of where I live? Is it family? Is it climate? Is it cost of living? Just think of one or two things there, and then think about your home. If you want to stay in your primary residence, should you do any kind of upgrades or anything like that? So then we're getting to the fourth W here. And the who, the what, and the where can maybe ultimately decide the when in a way. And this is a little bit harder because this is where money does obviously come into play. We can't deny that. So you want to think about your timeline in starting retirement. And oftentimes this is where we hear about a certain asset level or that you need to have saved. But really, most retirees, when they think about the when, they think about a personal or emotional milestone that they've reached in deciding when to retire. Maybe it's a career goal that they have. But we found that 59% of pre-retirees talked about just reaching a certain age. That will dictate to them when they retire. 44% each talked about wanting to stop working or feeling just ready to retire. It was 37% actually talked about eligibility for Social Security or Medicare. And then only 40% talked about reaching that certain asset level. So oftentimes it's the non-financial aspects that drive us in or motivate us in a way to retirement. And in that vein, you talk about transitioning. I know I will go back to this again, but Scott mentioned just stopping working and, things automatically change. Well, most people actually just don't stop working all at once. Only 29% of people stop working at once. Actually, 24% continue to work part-time, but in a job outside of their primary occupation. 21% just gradually reduce hours over time to when they're no longer working. 15% continue to work part-time, but in the same occupation. And then 8% actually cycle between working and not working. My uncle did that. He retired, and then he did some consulting for a while, then he'd take some time off, and then he'd pick up another consulting job. So that's common as well. And then actually 2% will continue to work full-time, but in a job outside of their primary occupation. And I really believe that a lot of people don't even think that's an option. I mean, I understand, you know, people want to stop working. I totally get that. But you can work, you can do something. Retiring doesn't mean to just stop working. Actually, the etymology of the word retirement comes from the 1530s, and it has to do with troops retiring from battle, or retiring to a different room. Let's say you've heard it in that context. It doesn't mean full stop, we're not going to work anymore. You can really do whatever you want in retirement and plan it how you want it to be. So when you think about the when would you ideally like to retire? Is it age? Is it asset level? Is it benefits? And then what would be that reason for influencing your retirement? Maybe it is financial, but are there other non-financial aspects that might influence it? Maybe you just wake up one day and decide, I'm ready to throw in the towel. I'm done working. I've hit my limit. I've accomplished everything I set out to, and it's time. Maybe, and this is where we don't like to think about it, but probably should consider it. Maybe there's a health situation that would require us to retire at a certain point. But it's important to, think about different reasons and what would be the most motivating factor in terms of the when. So take those action items, those one or two things, what would be the driving force? Is it asset level or is it age? And, what are some other things to consider that maybe you haven't even thought of? This could be a really good conversation for Scott, Alex, Spencer, and Tiffany to have. They can really help you with this. So now we're on to the final W, the biggie, the why. And remember, this isn't the why am I retiring? This is your sense of purpose in retirement. What brings you fulfillment and what gets you out of bed each morning? Because remember, you won't need to set an alarm clock, which was what I look forward to the most in retirement. But what will get you out of bed and make you excited? So, I think we've all seen this study out there, but there have been studies that found or followed 1,000 people, and they found those that had a greater purpose. And this goes back to that slide about social interaction. But those people who had a greater purpose were 2.5 times more likely to remain free of Alzheimer's. They were less likely to develop disabilities or die young, and they were less likely to develop mild cognitive impairment. And I have a story around this. My best friend growing up from Michigan, we're still very, very close, and I talk to her all the time. She just found out that her mother, her mother was just diagnosed with something called frontotemporal dementia or frontal lobe dementia, I believe. And it's been progressing for a while. And apparently it is the most genetic form of dementia there is. So most likely if you have it, or not most likely, but oftentimes a family member may have had it too. Well, in my friend's mother's case, there is no family history of it. And even though, I'm not a doctor, she's not a doctor, and it's very hard to find out what this all stems from, but she and her brothers and sisters contend that a lot of it had to do with this, that after their mother retired from being a kindergarten teacher, she lost her purpose. She found her identity in being the kindergarten teacher everyone knew, everyone loved, and she didn't have a plan for retirement. And she kind of receded into the background. She's single, divorced, and never traveled, actually had family money, so was able to do so, and just kind of sat home and really didn't interact. And even though we don't know for sure that really is the cause, it does kind of lend itself to maybe think that that is part of it. So it's so important to identify your purpose in retirement, whatever that may be. So when you think about what is most fulfilling for you today, what is it? Is it work? Because if it is, then that's something you really need to think about. If you're planning on retiring, maybe you want to do something else, work, but do something else. Or have you really thought about the effect that might have on you emotionally to stop working? I love work and I can't imagine, not working at some point. I'm sure I'll want to, but that may be harder than you think it is. So, or does spending time with family bring you fulfillment? Volunteering may bring you fulfillment, but make a list of the things that you truly enjoy doing and what gets you out of bed today. And then take that and see if it's the same as what will fulfill you in retirement, going down 5, 10 years from now. Will it be the same? Will it be spending time with family? Will it be traveling when you can finally do it? Or, just going out to dinner with friends and, having more of a social life, joining a book club, adopting a pet, which I just did. It could be anything, but this is the most important W. And then start with those action steps. One or two things that are fulfilling for you today and that what may be different 5 to 10 years from now. And I talked at the beginning about, being an English major and writing a book or an article or thinking of this as a screenplay, your movie about your retirement. So when you put all the W's together, the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why, what is the title of your book going to be? I think this is a really hard question. And in preparation for this evening, for doing this presentation, I actually asked my parents downstairs. I asked them this morning. It took my dad up until like 40 minutes ago to get me his answer, but what their book title is for their retirement. And I loved them. And it was very much them and their personality. My mom's title was The 7-Day Weekend. And I can tell you that is exactly how she views her retirement. She loves it. She loves not having an alarm clock. She loves, when she could volunteer and putzing around the house and all of that. My dad's was retirement : what do I do now? So he was trying to be funny. But whatever it is that speaks to you, think about a title. And then finally, take the culmination of all of your W's and put that together. And what would that be in the dust jacket of your book? Who is the what, the where, the when, the what, the where, the when, and the why. I missed one. I know I did. The who, the what, the where, the when, and the why of your dust jacket. A sentence for each. So just a reminder, we went through those. We know the 5 W's. And this is what I want you to think about this evening. When you look at why you want to visualize retirement and why the emotional part of retirement is just as important, if not more so, it's because it does help you to create that clarity, alleviate some anxiety, and find your true passion in retirement. So tonight or today, tomorrow, whenever, I want you to continue to refine your vision. Think about this, change it up from time to time. We have a worksheet to go along with this presentation that I will send to the team. They can email to you, mail it to you, whatever you want. So you continue working on this with them, with your family. Talk to your spouse, your family, your friends. They can help you. They can help you get to where you need to be. And then third and finally, work with Scott, Alex, Spencer, Tiffany. Is again, they are your financial therapists and they can help you, hit your goals on the other side of the retirement equation. So with that, thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone's time this evening.
Thank you so much, Erin. That's just great information to really think through. And to your last comment, be sure and call us and think of us as not just the financial part, because you can't separate the financial part from all these other things that she's been talking about. So use this as a resource regularly and keep us abreast of what's going on in your life as you transition to these new stages. We do have a couple of questions, and feel free to jump in with questions. We'd love to continue the dialogue for a little bit longer. The first one is from Doug, who's in the desert, saying, how often do you see people really think through these questions and then 5 to 10 years later dramatically change their plan? Is that rare? What concerns does that raise?
That's a great question. And I mean, from T Rose perspective, we don't see it very much at all. I think, as you know, we talked about earlier, that delta that exists between those who plan for the financial aspects and those who don't. I mean, it's, 75% of pre-retirees plan financially, but they don't emotionally. So most people don't think about these things. They think once that switch is flipped, everything's going to be great. I can do whatever I want. I can travel, but it's not that easy. And I hope this doesn't sound too depressing, but it actually can be a depressing time for people. So it's not a good thing because they didn't plan for that aspect. And then now they're stuck. They don't know what to do.
We do see it once in a while, but usually there's a triggering event, healthcare, family, proximity to kids. There's usually some triggering event that is a little bit, unexpected. But, so you have to have some flexibility in your plan, but if you have a game plan, usually you can work through those things fairly well. Next question was, can we share the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Excellent. We do have the PDF version of the workbook that she has, and then Erin's going to send us some hard copies. We can mail those out to people if you'd like the hard copy instead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a couple of comments about how nice it is to retire. Like I said, feel free to pipe in with some additional questions. I had a couple of comments I was going to make that recently we've kind of come across, or just elaborating on a couple of them. The where we just recently had a client that moved from a state with no state income tax to a state with I think it's a 9% state income tax. That's a huge financial challenge if you take an additional 9% off of all your income to pay the state government. So you do want to make sure you're cognizant of that and think through that. The downsize comment, we do see people downsize a bit, but usually it's a downsize and upgrade. So it's a financial neutral. And then also, think in terms of, what does the housing story look like in your later years? And we get some clients that really focus on maintaining independence, which means staying in their primary residence. I would maintain that it's easier to maintain your independence when you go to a facility that helps provide some support and some structure. And that's certainly been our experience in watching clients go through that. Another question before I go on with my comments, what does research show about moving to a location where you don't know anybody?
So can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, my parents moved down here. So this is just, I don't have research on that. I know I moved from Detroit to Seattle and I knew no one, but as far as my parents went or go, they did have my aunt and uncle down there, but they built their social network outside of my aunt and uncle, and they moved to a community specifically where they knew there would be people their age. And then there's also younger families here too. They liked that mix of ages, but the part of the neighborhood they're in are, 1-story houses. So there are more people their age right around here. So they made a lot of friends in their neighborhood. A lot of people from the north have moved down here. So they were able to find their group. But, one thing too to consider, as I mentioned, they also looked at, planned communities, the 55 and older. they are actually even considering that in a couple years, because this house is actually a little too big for them. So that's another way to kind of build that social network, is perhaps a community or doing some research on neighborhoods. They did a lot of research to find what the different age groups would be here, and that helped a lot.
We've had the suggestion for people who are committed to moving but not necessarily determined on the neighborhood, is it's okay to rent for a few months when you get to that
Exactly.
new city or new area, and make sure you love the area you're in. Don't just kind of arbitrarily pick one and then 6 months later, a year later, regret it, and have to buy and sell, or sell and buy again.
Yep.
If you
True.
cross state lines, make sure you update your estate planning documents. We just got a comment from one of the participants that does estate planning for clients, and she says it's great to keep reminding people why they're saving and planning, and she plans to use the who, what, where, when, and why with her clients. So that's
Great.
nice feedback. So when to retire, we've had a couple of things that just came to my mind. Financially, we hear, or we talk about a lot, is there anything tied to compensation that makes sense to wait? A bonus, pension increase, year-end compensation, just, healthcare, some of those things that where your employer will have some financial reason for you to stay. A lot of fun ones. We've had clients retire on their birthday, which is kind of, we pick a year and we start to plan for it, and it's kind of a fun target and a fun reward on a birthday. So that's kind of fun. So I don't have any other questions coming in at the moment. Again, thank you, Erin. Appreciate it. Please, participants, reach out to us with feedback. We'd love to hear your comments, and also any requests for additional subject matter. We're still kind of building out our calendar for 2021. We know definitely we're going to have at least probably 2 meetings on long-term care insurance. And while we were in this Zoom, I got an email that makes it even more pressing for people who are going to be working for a little bit at least. The state of Washington has implemented a long-term care insurance, it's going to be a payroll tax. And if you don't participate for more than for 10 years, you don't get the benefit, but you still have to pay. But if you buy a long-term care policy before what looks like it's going to be July, you can be exempt from this tax and own your own policy. It was going to be, the exemption was going to apply if you bought it before probably 2022, but the Congress in the state of Washington just met today and changed that. So be prepared to listen to this. This is critical because you're going to pay for it out of your paychecks, whether you want it or not. But yeah, please let us know if there's other subjects. Let's see, we have a couple other comments. Thank you so much. Good information. Asking for the booklet. Yes, we'll get that out. We'll get the PDF out by email tomorrow, and the hard copies, once we have them in our hands, we'll pass them on. So yep. Thanks everyone for attending. I think that's it for now, and use this as a resource, and we'll talk soon, hopefully maybe in person some point in 2021. So everybody take care and stay healthy.
Thank you all.